"Sir, step off the bike," she said, like she was doing the world a favor. He didn't move, didn't argue, just watched. The leather gloves on his hands were cracked. His helmet was chipped. The bike beneath him rumbled like it remembered war. To her, he looked like trouble. To the town, he looked like a problem. 45 minutes later, they'd all look again, because 6 black SUVs would roll into Ridgefield, and 50 men would step out, not to stop him, but to wait. They'd form a corridor, in silence, for the man they called Colonel. No speeches, no orders, just reverence. They stopped him like he was nobody. Turns out nobody knew who he really was. What do you see now? Before the story unfolds, drop your city in the comments and subscribe. Let's see how far this silence carries. It was a Tuesday when Deputy Clara Wills pulled over the bike on Ridgefield Route 7. The heat shimmered above the pavement. Pine dust drifted in lazy curls, and the man hadn't moved since she stepped out of the cruiser. He was facing east, away from town, astride an old steel-frame cruiser with no plate, no registration sticker. Just dust, a navy blue jacket, and stillness. Clara approached with one hand on her holster. "License and registration, please," she said. "Sir?" Nothing. He sat tall, not hunched like most his age, his boots grounded firm, his shoulders square under the weight of an age-worn canvas jacket. His helmet, chipped and sun-faded, looked like it hadn't been taken off in years. Clara shifted her weight, closer now. "Sir, I need you to turn off the engine and step off the vehicle." Still, nothing. No anger, no tension, just stillness. She tried again, louder. "I'm not asking." The old man moved, slowly, deliberately, reaching into his jacket. She tensed. His hand came out with a wallet, brown, leather, soft at the corners. She took it. The license inside read, "Walter A. Mercer, Diob, April 1st, 1942, age 83, address, P.O. Box 117, Hilltop Ridge. No street, just a box and a region." She looked from the card to the man. He hadn't blinked. "You're 83? No answer. She turned the license over. It was valid. No warrants, no flags, but no plate on the bike, and no registration either. "Mr. Mercer," she said, "this bike's not street legal. You're going to have to step off while I issue a citation." She waited. He looked at her hands, not her face, then turned to glance behind him, at the road, then back to her. "You transferred in from Oakvale, right?" he asked. She froze. That wasn't on her badge. It wasn't in her tone. And she'd only moved here 6 months ago. "Excuse me?" she said. Mercer just looked forward again. "I'm not going to tell you twice," Clara said. "Step off the vehicle." Down the road, someone was filming now. A teenager leaning out the passenger window of a parked truck. Another kid had stopped his bike across the road, and the man still wouldn't move. Clara radioed in. "Dispatch, this is Unit 4. Elderly male subject, non-compliant, requesting backup to Route 7 past mile marker 14. Copy that, Unit 4. Backup en route, ETA 8 minutes. Another voice came over the channel. "Unit 2 here. That wouldn't be Walter Mercer, would it?" Clara paused. "Unknown. Subject's not speaking. License says Walter A. Mercer." Silence. Then, "Unit 4, don't escalate." From across the road, a woman stepped out of the gas station office. Her name tag read Ruby. She was mid-50s, wearing an apron stained with coffee. She squinted at the scene, then at the bike. Then she shouted, "Is that Wally?" Clara didn't answer. Ruby wiped her hands and pulled out a phone. But she wasn't dialing 911. She was calling someone else. Her brother Randall worked security at a federal outpost 10 miles north. And Randall didn't answer unknown calls. But when she said Walter Mercer, he picked up. And when she said deputy pulled him over, Randall went quiet. Then, stay with him. Don't interfere, just don't let them move him. Ruby looked at the silent man on the bike, then at the deputy, then back. And for the first time in 10 years, she felt a chill run down her spine in 90-degree heat. Walter Mercer hadn't spoken more than 10 words in Ridgefield in the last decade. He paid for gas in cash, never argued about change, tipped exact. He lived off the hilltop road, a stretch of gravel and fog where the pine trees swallowed up the sky, in a cabin older than the county itself. Some said he was a retired mechanic. Others thought he was ex-military. A few whispered he was something darker. Nobody ever saw him at church. Nobody ever saw him in town meetings. But every week, like clockwork, that old steel-frame cruiser rolled through Route 7. Same time, same gas stop, same rumble like thunder caught in its throat. Clara didn't know any of this. She just knew she was standing on hot asphalt with an old man who wouldn't move and a bike that wouldn't shut up. She checked her watch. Backup was late. A second vehicle pulled up, local patrol. Officer Mills stepped out. He was 26, fresh from academy. "What have we got?" he asked. "Non-compliance, no plate, no response." Mills tilted his head, studying Mercer. "Guy looks like he's been through a war." "He might have been," Clara muttered. Across the street, Ruby's voice cracked through her phone. "They've got him surrounded now. Wally's just sitting there, haven't moved an inch." Randall's voice was tight. "They don't know." "Know what?" Randall didn't answer right away, then, "Check your messages. Sending coordinates. You'll know." Ruby opened her inbox. A photo, black and white. A younger Mercer in fatigues, flanked by men in tactical gear. Dust storm behind them. Her brother had written one word in the caption. Echo. Clara moved to the side of the bike. Mercer's hands still rested on the grips. Calm. She crouched, eye level now. "Sir, I'm not trying to start anything. I just need to know if you're okay. Are you hurt?" He finally looked at her, then spoke. "I've seen worse days." His voice was sandpaper and smoke. "Like when?" He didn't answer. Behind them, the hum came, low at first, then rising, like thunder from far away. Mills turned, shading his eyes. "What the hell? 6 SUVs, matte black, no markings, no sirens, moving in formation. They didn't stop at the gas station, didn't slow at the cruiser. They parked in a perfect arc around the scene. Doors opened in sequence. A man stepped out of the front SUV, mid-50s, khaki shirt, no insignia. His steps were calm, deliberate, controlled. He walked toward Clara, stopped 6 feet away. "Deputy?" "Yes, sir?" "I'm here for Walter Mercer." Clara's voice was steady. "May I ask your name?" "No." "Identification?" The man pulled a small card from his breast pocket. It wasn't a badge, just a laminate tag with a seal she didn't recognize. She handed it back without reading. "You'll stand down now," he said gently. The other officers behind her didn't move. "Mr. Mercer is not under arrest," Clara said. "He's being detained pending ID verification." The man raised a brow. "Do you know who he is?" "I know he's 83, unregistered, and not speaking." "That man trained 3 generations of defense intelligence operatives," the man said. "He built a program so classified, it doesn't exist on paper. You've read textbooks shaped by his decisions without knowing it. Half the command language used in counterinsurgency worldwide came from him." Clara's mouth opened, but no sound came. Walter Mercer doesn't need to speak to prove anything. He already did. Behind the speaker, more men stepped out of the SUVs, uniforms this time. but no names, no unit patches. They walked in silence and stood in formation, and then, in complete synchronization, they snapped to attention and saluted. The crowd across the street had grown. Phones were up. Eyes were wide. The silence was deafening. Mercer didn't look at them. He just turned the key. The bike roared awake, and slowly, steadily, he rode between them, the silent corridor parting like memory itself. Nobody cheered. Nobody dared. Just one long, slow ride into the kind of history that doesn't get told. When Walter Mercer disappeared down Route 7, the crowd didn't disperse immediately. Phones were still held in midair, but no one was shouting. No hashtags, no accusations, just awe. Deputy Clara Wills stood in the middle of it all, badge heavy, pride hollowed out, and watched the last SUV turn slowly and follow him into the tree line. She didn't call it in. She didn't need to. Because 5 minutes later, the precinct phones started ringing. Not from locals, not from state, but from somewhere higher. Inside Ridgefield Sheriff's Department, Sheriff Marlon Hayes had been sipping bad coffee for most of the morning. Now he stared at the blinking light on his office phone. Line 3, unknown origin. He picked up. "This is Hayes." A pause. Then, "Sheriff, this is Director Alan Rowe, Office of Intelligence Coordination." Hayes blinked. "I assume you're calling about the traffic stop." "Correct. And I assume you've already guessed who you stopped." Hayes exhaled through his nose. "Walter Mercer." "Colonel Walter Mercer, Echo Division, Kestrel Subgroup." Hayes leaned back. "I thought Kestrel was a myth." "So did most of Congress," Rowe said. Then silence. Hayes cleared his throat. "Is there going to be a problem?" "No legal problem, but there will be an adjustment." "To what?" Rowe's voice was steady. "To how you train your officers, starting immediately." 2 days later, every Ridgefield deputy was seated in the rec room of the station. No patrol, no traffic duty, mandatory attendance. A projection screen had been wheeled in. A laptop waited beside it. 3 men in unmarked khaki sat at the front, arms crossed. And in the middle of the table sat a dossier, thick, bound, and stamped redacted. Deputy Wills was the last to enter. No one looked at her, but no one looked away either. One of the instructors stood. "My name is irrelevant. What matters is what you missed, not by accident, by design." He opened the dossier. The first slide appeared. It was a photo. Mercer, maybe 40, standing beside a convoy in what looked like Middle Eastern terrain. The instructor began, "This is Colonel Mercer, 1987. He built what we now call counter-shift engagement theory. You don't know the name because it was never published. You use it every day." Slide change. "Here he is in 1991, Operation Calyx." Another. "1998, Kestrel Base, no survivors, except one." More slides. More blacked-out names. Until the last one. Mercer, standing in front of a simple white wall. No uniform, just his hands behind his back. Caption: "Retired, but not forgotten." The training went on for 3 days. By the end of it, every officer had signed a clearance agreement, a non-disclosure contract, and a code of behavior clause. They weren't just trained on how to handle veterans. They were trained on how to recognize legacy. Clara drove out to Hilltop Ridge the next evening. No cruiser, no badge. Just her old black sedan and a thermos of black coffee. Mercer's cabin looked the same. Pine needles on the porch, an empty rocking chair, the faint smell of motor oil and memory. She knocked. Nothing. Knocked again. A scraping noise. Then the door opened. He looked older than 2 days ago, or maybe just quieter. "Deputy?" Clara. He opened the door fully. "Come in." She handed him the thermos. "It's hot." He nodded. They sat at the same table from days before. No fanfare, no apology, just breath and time. "I saw the photos," she said. He waited. "I read the captions." Still silence. Then she asked the only question she hadn't dared voice before. "Why stay here? Why live like this?" Mercer took a sip of coffee. "Because this is the only place where no one tries to say thank you and get it wrong." She frowned. "Get it wrong?" He leaned back. "People say thank you for your service, like I delivered a package, like it was clean. I didn't deliver peace, I delivered silence, and silence costs." They sat in that silence together, not as officer and veteran, but as two people who had misjudged what the world was made of. Outside, the wind pressed through the trees, and the bike, old and sun-worn, stood in the driveway, still warm from its last ride. By Friday, the story had made its way past Ridgefield. A grainy video clip surfaced online, 6 SUVs forming a wall around an old man on a bike. Uniformed men stepping out, a corridor of silence. No voices, no titles, just reverence. The post read, "They stopped him like he was nobody, but soldiers still move for him. Who is this man?" Nobody answered, but everyone watched. At first it was curiosity, then speculation, then reverence. The kind social media rarely shows to the quiet ones. Clara kept returning to the cabin, not because she was ordered to, not because she wanted to apologize again, because she didn't have anyone else to ask the questions that had started echoing in her head. This time she brought lunch, left it on the porch. She didn't knock. Instead, she sat on the second step, letting the sun hit her back, the breeze shift the pine needles. After a while, Mercer stepped out. No words. He just sat beside her, opened the paper bag, took a bite of the sandwich. After 2 minutes, he asked, "You always bring food you don't eat?" "I wasn't hungry." "That's not what I asked," she shrugged. He took another bite. "I ran your name through what I could access," she said after a while. "Most of it's sealed, but there are traces. A few mentions in the congressional minutes from the late 90s. Testimonies from men who never said who trained them. Someone called you the man who solved problems before they were born." Mercer stared out into the trees. "I didn't solve problems. I ended patterns." "Same thing, isn't it?" He shook his head. "Solving a problem means fixing what exists. Ending a pattern means breaking what repeats." That evening, as the sun dropped below the tree line, Clara pulled a notebook from her bag. She held it out. Mercer looked at it, but didn't take it. "What's that?" "Everything I assumed about you, and everything I learned after." "Why write it down?" "Because memory leaks." He nodded. Still didn't take it. She placed it on the step between them. When she stood, he didn't thank her, and she didn't expect him to. Meanwhile, in a quiet room beneath the federal outpost 10 miles north, Director Alan Rowe was debriefing a pair of internal liaisons. "He'll need to be monitored," one of them said. "He's too public now." Rowe didn't blink. "Walter Mercer has earned the right to disappear however he chooses. We don't interfere with that. But the footage is vague, intentional. No names, no locations, and no one will believe what they don't want to understand." The room went still. "What happens if he speaks?" Rowe smiled faintly. "He won't." That night, Mercer walked alone behind his cabin. No cane, no flashlight. Just the sound of wind, branches, and his own careful steps. He stopped at the edge of the ridge where a single wooden post stood. No flag, no inscription. Just a rusted dog tag nailed to the wood. He placed his hand over it, closed his eyes, and for the first time in 20 years, whispered a name no one alive remembered. At the precinct, Clara stood in front of the training board. The other deputies, even the older ones, watched her. "Respect isn't something you perform," she said. "It's something you protect, and it doesn't always wear a badge or carry a title. Sometimes it rides a bike with no plate and won't answer you when you ask for ID." She scanned the room. "No one's asking you to bow to every old man with a stare, but we're asking you to hesitate, to wonder, to make room for the story that didn't introduce itself." That's all she said. It was enough. In the days that followed, the cruiser Mercer rode sat idle. The bike never moved. No one knew if he was gone or simply resting. And when the silence stretched to 2 weeks, Clara returned to the ridge one last time. She knocked. No answer. She left no note. Just sat again on the step. Quiet. Listening. Because she'd learned something. Some men don't disappear. They just return to the quiet they once came from. A month passed. The weather turned. Ridgefield's skies dimmed with fall. The air smelled like cedar and smoke. The silence around Walter Mercer didn't fade. It thickened. Not ominous, just settled. The bike still sat by the porch, the seat covered in yellowing leaves. Kids stopped taking pictures. Ruby stopped calling. And Clara visited once a week, even if no one answered. She always brought something small, a jar of honey, a map of old patrol routes. One time, a small notebook with nothing written on the cover, just blank pages in case Mercer ever decided the world still needed to hear from him. She didn't knock anymore. She just left things by the door. Back at the precinct, the story of the man on the bike had become part of unofficial training. No one joked about it. They just remembered it. A reminder stitched into the back of their minds like a scar that doesn't hurt, but tightens when it rains. Sheriff Hayes made a point of not asking questions. He let the legend live without being dissected. Even rookies who hadn't been there whispered the story right. They stopped him like he was nobody. But 50 men came for him. One evening, Clara found a small envelope under the precinct windshield of her car. No stamp, no writing, just her name in block letters. Inside was a photograph, not digital, film, printed, old, Mercer, younger but not young. Standing in a desert, one foot resting on a sandbag, pointing off into a haze. Around him, soldiers in half gear, all eyes on him. On the back, one sentence. "The silence we serve is louder than the orders we follow." No signature. But she knew. That same night at Hilltop Ridge, a stranger knocked at Mercer's door. Not an officer, not military, just a young man, early 20s, wearing a worn backpack and a badge stitched into the fabric. Echo Field Unit. Denied casualty. Mercer opened the door halfway. The young man didn't speak at first, just handed over a small box. Inside, a piece of a radio, shattered, a bullet casing, a nameplate. Mercer looked at each item slowly, then raised his eyes. "Was he yours?" The young man nodded. "My father. Died in 98. They said you found him." Mercer looked at the nameplate again. "I remember. I never knew what to do with these," the boy said. "But I thought, maybe you should be the one to decide." Mercer didn't cry. He didn't even blink. He just took the box, and with a voice like gravel breaking open, he said, "Thank you for letting me carry him a little longer." The young man left, without asking questions, and Mercer sat that night by the fireplace, hands cradling the pieces. He didn't add them to the shelf. He didn't place them in a drawer. He kept them on the table, open, visible, as if memory didn't need to be buried to be honored. Fall became winter. The Ridgefield Gazette ran a short article with no byline. Rider of Silence recognized in unnamed ceremony. No photos, no details, just a one-sentence tribute. Sometimes history doesn't need names, just the decency to look twice. The town remembered, not loudly, but honestly. Clara transferred 6 months later, not out of shame, but out of purpose. She began a program, a field initiative to help officers identify invisible service, trauma, and institutional scars. She never said Mercer's name in press releases, but the logo of the program showed a single-lane road, winding between trees, and one word: stillness. On a warm afternoon in early spring, a convoy, not black, not armored, but quiet, pulled into Ridgefield. 3 motorcycles, 2 sedans, all riders older than 60. They parked beside the gas station where it had all started. One of them leaned against a post and asked Ruby, "This where it happened?" She nodded. They didn't take photos. They didn't record videos. They just stood for a while. One placed an old unit patch at the base of the Route 7 marker. Then they left. A week later, the bike was gone. No tracks, no notes, just an empty spot beneath a pine tree where the leaves were pressed into the shape of its wheels. No one saw Mercer again. No one announced his passing. But the silence shifted. The kind that doesn't mean someone left. It just means they're no longer waiting. He didn't want medals. He didn't ask for applause. He only asked for space to ride through. Now that you've heard his story, tell us, what would you have seen? A threat or a man? And if you believe some stories don't need volume, just truth, subscribe to This Really Happened, because sometimes silence is the loudest proof.